The first thing I heard after dying was my mother asking me to smile for the funeral photograph. I opened my eyes to the smell of lilies, wet wool, and burnt coffee. My cheek was pressed against something heavy and familiar. Navy leather sleeves, white striped cuffs, a gold hawk stitched over the heart. Caleb's varsity jacket. For 3 full seconds, I forgot how to breathe. Then the chapel doors groaned behind me, and every memory came back at once. The bridge railing exploding through my windshield, rain turning sideways, my husband's voice through the speaker saying, "You should have sold that stupid jacket when I told you to." The river swallowing the headlights. The cold. The dark. The certainty that Adrian had killed me because I finally understood what had happened to my brother. But I was not in the river. I was 24 again, kneeling beside Caleb's open casket 5 years before my death. My hands tightened around the jacket until the old leather creaked. Across the room, Adrian Vale stood beside my mother in a black suit, handsome enough to look innocent without trying. In my first life, I had mistaken his stillness for strength. Now I saw calculation. His eyes were fixed on the jacket in my lap. Not on Caleb. On the jacket. "Mara," my mother whispered. "People are waiting." I looked at the framed photograph near the casket. Caleb was grinning in his football uniform, helmet under one arm, as if the camera had caught him halfway through an argument he knew he would win. Officially, he had died after driving drunk and losing control on Blackwater Road. The police called it reckless. The school called it tragic. Adrian, then the assistant coach and my boyfriend, called it proof that Caleb had been hiding a dangerous side. 5 years later, I had found the autopsy amendment Adrian paid to bury. Caleb had no alcohol in his blood. He had been struck behind the ear before the crash. I rose slowly, the jacket folded over my arms. Adrian stepped toward me. "Let me take that." The same sentence. The same gentle voice. Even the small sympathetic tilt of his head was identical. In my first life, I had handed it over. This time, I stepped back. His fingers closed on empty air. Something flashed across his face. Not grief. Alarm. "I'm keeping it," I said. The room went quiet in the way rooms do when a woman refuses a man who has already decided she will obey. Adrian recovered quickly. "Of course. I only meant it might be painful to have around." "It feels heavy," I said, watching him. "Like there's something inside it." His jaw flexed. There it was. Tiny. Instant. Real. My rebirth had given me no instructions, no glowing clock, no promise that changing one moment would save me. It gave me only memory, and memory was cruel. I remembered marrying Adrian. I remembered defending him when Caleb's teammates whispered about fixed games. I remembered signing over my share of my father's construction company after Adrian claimed we needed to protect it from a lawsuit. I remembered my mother dying convinced her son had been a drunk and her daughter had been ungrateful. Most of all, I remembered the jacket disappearing the week after the funeral. Adrian had said he donated it. Years later, when I asked which charity, he told me to stop living in the past. Now the past was wrapped around my arms. After the service, while relatives gathered beneath dripping umbrellas, Adrian cornered me beside the chapel's coat room. "We need to talk about Caleb's debts," he said. "Today?" "He borrowed money. More than your mother knows. Selling a few things might help." He touched the jacket sleeve. I stared at his hand until he removed it. "You want me to sell this?" "Pawn it," he corrected softly. "You can always buy it back later." That was not what he had said in my first life. In my first life, he had waited 3 days. I smiled, and for the first time since waking, I felt something stronger than fear. Adrian remembered the jacket mattered. He just did not know I remembered too. "I'll think about it," I said. Relief loosened his shoulders. Then I leaned close enough to smell the mint he chewed whenever he lied. "But before I pawn it, I'm going to find out why my dead brother sewed the inside pocket shut." I waited until midnight to cut the stitches. My mother had taken 2 sleeping tablets and left the hallway light burning, just as she had after every family disaster. Rain tapped the windows of Caleb's bedroom. His trophies still crowded the shelf above his desk, polished by someone who believed preserving dustless objects could delay grief. I locked the door and spread the jacket across his bed. The hidden pocket was not part of the original lining. Caleb had sewn it himself with black thread, clumsy stitches buried beneath the embroidered hawk. In my first life, I had never noticed because Adrian took the jacket before I slept under this roof again. I slid a seam ripper beneath the thread. A folded pawn ticket fell out. For one irrational moment, disappointment hit me. I had expected a confession, a recording, something dramatic enough to reverse death. Instead, I held a stained receipt from Bell Street Exchange for a silver championship ring, pawned 11 days before Caleb died. Then I saw the name. Not Caleb Hart.
Adriel Vale.
The ticket listed the seller's identification number and a redemption deadline 3 days after the funeral. On the back, written in Caleb's narrow handwriting, were 6 words. Ask why he needed cash fast. A second object remained in the pocket, a tiny brass locker key stamped 214. My pulse began to race. In my old life, Adrian had told police Caleb sold his championship ring to pay gambling debts. The ring appeared in evidence photographs after the crash, supposedly found in Caleb's glove compartment. I had believed it because grief makes simple lies feel merciful. A dead brother with a secret addiction was easier to understand than a living man with a reason to frame him. I photographed the ticket and key, then returned both to the pocket. Before reviewing it, I noticed a faint brown smear beneath the lining.
Blood.
The knock came so suddenly I drove the needle into my thumb. Mara? Adrian's voice passed through the door. Are you awake? I covered the jacket with Caleb's blanket. It's midnight. I know. Your mother called. She said you were upset. My mother had been asleep for 2 hours. I opened the door only as far as the security chain allowed. Adrian stood in the hall holding 2 paper cups, rain glistening on his shoulders. To anyone else, he looked thoughtful. To me, he looked like a man arriving before evidence could cool. I brought tea, he said. You hate tea. It's for you. I accepted neither cup. Did you pawn Caleb's championship ring? The question landed cleanly. Adrian blinked once. What? Bell Street Exchange. 11 days ago. His expression did not collapse. Adrian was too practiced for that. Instead, concern softened his features. Caleb told you? I asked you. He needed money. The shop would not accept his student identification, so I helped him. I was trying to protect him. In my experience, people who protect someone usually mention it after that person dies. His eyes moved past me toward the bed. You searched the jacket. It was not a question. I let the silence answer. Adrian set the cups on the floor. Caleb was mixed up in things you don't understand. Betting. Pills. Men who make threats. That jacket is connected to all of it. Then the police should see it. His hand struck the door before I could close it. The chain snapped tight. For 1 second, the gentle mask disappeared. His face became flat, furious, and strangely familiar. The face I had glimpsed in the rearview mirror when his truck forced my car toward the bridge. Then he released the door. I'm sorry, he said. I'm scared for you. I smiled through the gap. You should be.
He stared at me.
Behind my back, my bleeding thumb pressed into Caleb's jacket, leaving one bright mark beside the old brown stain. 2 sisters of blood, 5 years apart. Adrian stepped away, but not before whispering. Pawn it tomorrow, Mara. Some memories are expensive to keep. I shut the door and slid the dresser against it. Only then did I examine the key beneath my lamp. Locker 214 belonged to the old municipal stadium. The stadium scheduled demolition in 48 hours. At 6 the next morning, I lied to my mother for the first time in my second life. I told her I was going to the cemetery. She looked relieved. Cemeteries made sense to grieving people. Stadium lockers did not. I drove Caleb's rusted pickup because Adrian had installed a location-sharing application on my phone during our first engagement. Back then, he called it romantic. I left the phone beneath my mattress, wrapped the jacket in a grocery bag, and took every back road I remembered. The municipal stadium sat behind the high school like an abandoned ship. Yellow demolition notices covered the gates. Caleb had played his final game there, scoring the winning touchdown before collapsing near the sideline with what Coach Mercer called dehydration. I remembered Adrian kneeling over him. I remembered Caleb pushing him away. Locker 214 was in the officials' corridor, not the players' room. The key turned after 3 attempts. Inside waited a red duffel bag, a disposable camera, and an envelope addressed to me. Mara, if I'm wrong, burn this and call me paranoid. My knees nearly failed. I sat on the concrete floor and opened the letter. Caleb's words were rushed, the ink gouging through the paper. He wrote that Adrian and head coach Daniel Mercer had been fixing point spreads through controlled substitutions, fake injuries, and deliberately missed plays. The scheme began with small bets placed through parents and alumni. Then it expanded. Players were pressured to participate. Those who refused lost scholarships, starting positions, or medical clearance. Caleb had refused. He had also discovered that Adrian used my father's company vehicles to move cash between betting agents. That explained why our family business later faced a tax investigation, the crisis Adrian used to convince me to transfer my shares. The last paragraph stopped me cold. I think Dad found out. Adrian says Dad's fall was an accident, but he knew which scaffolding report went missing. Don't trust him just because you love him. My father had died 8 months before Caleb. A fall at one of our construction sites. In my first life, I had believed our family was cursed. Now I understood curses sometimes wore tailored suits and brought tea. The disposable camera contained 12 exposures. I held it to the weak light, but could see nothing. The duffel bag contained photocopied betting slips, maintenance logs for a company truck, and 3 sealed vials labeled with players' names. One belonged to Caleb. A noise scraped outside the corridor. I froze. Footsteps approached, measured and unhurried. I shoved the documents into the duffel, pulled the jacket on, and climbed onto the bench beneath a broken ventilation window. The opening was narrow. I forced my shoulders through as the locker room door opened. Locker 214, a man said.
Adrian.
Another voice answered. Coach Mercer. We checked it after the accident. You checked the player lockers, Adrian snapped. He was smarter than you. Their footsteps stopped outside. I kicked the loose screen free and dropped into a strip of weeds behind the building. Pain shot through my ankle, but I stayed silent. The duffel followed, landing with a thud that sounded enormous. The locker door creaked open inside. Empty, Mercer said. Adrian did not answer. I ran crouched along the wall, reached Caleb's truck, and threw the bag onto the passenger seat. The engine coughed twice before starting. In the mirror, Adrian emerged from the stadium.
He saw the truck.
Our eyes met across the cracked asphalt. Then he began to run. I accelerated through the chain service exit, snapping the rusted padlock from its post. Adrian's hand slapped the tailgate once before the truck pulled free. I did not slow until the stadium disappeared. Only then did I notice the envelope on the floor had opened further. A smaller note had been hidden behind Caleb's letter. It contained one sentence. If they find this locker, the real proof is where Adrian first taught you to drive. My first driving lesson had not been in a car. It had been in my father's yellow bulldozer, at the quarry Adrian now controlled. The quarry was the one place I could not enter without being seen. After my father died, Adrian became temporary operations director of Hart Construction. In my first life, temporary became permanent because I signed whatever he placed before me. He controlled the gates, cameras, payroll, and men who still called me the owner's little girl, even though half the company legally belonged to me. So, I did not go to the quarry. I went to the pawn shop. Bell Street Exchange opened at 9 beneath a flickering red sign. The owner, Mrs. Bell, was 70, sharp-eyed, and unimpressed by grief. She examined the pawn ticket through a magnifying lens, then examined me with greater suspicion. This was issued to Adrian Vale, she said. He used my brother's ring. That is what your brother claimed. You spoke to Caleb? 3 days before he died. He came in angry enough to shake the glass. Mrs. Bell disappeared behind a barred door and returned with a ledger and an old security cassette. She said Caleb had demanded footage proving Adrian pawned the ring. She refused because he was not the customer. The next morning, someone broke into the shop. Nothing valuable was taken, but the digital recorder was destroyed. Whoever did it forgot old people distrust new machines, she said, tapping the cassette.
Backup camera.
My heart hammered. Can we watch it? Machine died last winter. I took the cassette to the only person from my first life who had ever apologized for not believing me. Nina Reyes had been Caleb's closest friend, the school newspaper editor, and later an investigative journalist. In my old life, she contacted me after my mother's death and said Caleb had tried to expose a betting network. Adrian convinced me Nina wanted publicity. I blocked her number. 2 years later, she published an article about corruption in youth athletics. It vanished after a lawsuit funded by Adrian's foundation. At 19, Nina worked in the back room of her uncle's electronics repair store. When I placed the cassette and Caleb's letter before her, she read without speaking. Her face tightened only once at the sentence about my father. You believed Adrian over Caleb, she said. It was not an accusation. That made it worse. In another life, I did. She looked up sharply. I almost did, I corrected. Nina found a combination television and cassette player beneath a stack of game consoles. The footage rolled in grainy black and white. At 4:17 p.m., Adrian entered the pawn shop wearing a Hart construction jacket and placed Caleb's ring on the counter.
He was not alone.
Coach Mercer stood near the door. Adrian counted cash, then removed a thick envelope from inside his coat and handed it to Mercer. Mercer opened it just enough for the camera to catch rows of banknotes. A third man appeared in the mirror behind the counter. Police Captain Owen Shaw, the officer who signed Caleb's accident report. Nina paused the tape.
There, she said.
Shaw was holding a clear evidence bag containing several orange prescription bottles, the same kind police later claimed they found in Caleb's truck. I felt the room tilt. The conspiracy was not two frightened coaches hiding illegal bets. It included the man responsible for investigating my brother's death. Nina copied the tape onto 3 drives. One went into her uncle's safe. One went inside a hollowed radio. I tucked the third into the jacket lining, replacing the locker key. What now? She asked. We find what Caleb hid at the quarry. That is exactly where they expect you to go. Yes.
Nina studied me.
You have a plan? I have the beginning of one. Before I could explain, the shop's front bell rang. Adrian walked in carrying flowers. He smiled when he saw me, then looked at the paused image on the screen. For the first time in either of my lives, Adrian Vale forgot to pretend. He lunged for the television. Nina yanked the cassette free. I stepped between them. Adrian stopped inches from me, chest heaving. You don't know what you're doing, he said. I know you pawned Caleb's ring before you planted it in his truck. His gaze dropped to the varsity jacket I had chosen to wear. Then he smiled again.
Not warmly.
Good, he whispered. Now I don't have to wonder how much you found. Adrian did not touch me in the repair shop. That would have been easier. Instead, he straightened his tie, apologized to Nina for the interruption, and placed the flowers on the counter as though he had arrived for a polite visit. His control returned so completely that I understood why juries would later trust him. Rage was only dangerous when witnesses could see it. Mara is grieving, he said to Nina. Caleb filled her head with accusations before he died. Did he also fill a pawnshop tape with your face? Nina asked. Adrian glanced at the empty cassette slot. Old footage can be misunderstood. So can autopsies, I said. That landed. His eyes narrowed. I had revealed too much. In this timeline, the amended autopsy had not yet been buried because the final toxicology report was still pending. I knew what it would say, but Adrian had no reason to think I did. He took my elbow gently. Let's go home. I pulled away. We're finished. His expression remained calm, but his voice dropped. You don't get to decide that while you're unstable. There it was, the foundation of the defense he would build against everything I said. Grieving sister. Emotional woman. Confused fiancé. He did not need to disprove evidence if he could discredit the person carrying it. I smiled loudly enough for the customers near the front to hear. Did you just call me unstable because I found footage of you exchanging cash with the officer investigating my brother's death? 3 heads turned. Adrian left without the flowers. That afternoon, the first attack came from my own family. My Uncle Graham, my father's younger brother, summoned me to the Heart Construction office. He sat behind my father's desk wearing my father's watch and explained that Adrian had reported concerns about my mental health. Until I recovered, Graham wanted me to sign a temporary proxy allowing him and Adrian to manage my company shares. In my first life, I had signed that document after Caleb's funeral. I read every page now. Buried beneath the temporary language was an irrevocable voting transfer triggered by medical incapacity. Once signed, Adrian could use any friendly doctor to remove my control permanently. I tore the document in half. Graham's face reddened. Your father trusted me. My father also kept 3 sets of financial records. He went pale. That was a guess. A useful one. I leaned across the desk. Which set contains the payments to Coach Mercer? Graham stood so fast his chair hit the wall. The door opened behind me. Adrian stepped in. Too fast. He had been listening. I backed toward the window, calculating distance.
2 men.
1 exit. No witnesses except the receptionist, who had gone to lunch. Then the fire alarm screamed. Sprinklers erupted from the ceiling. Adrian swore. Graham shouted about the files. I ran through the confusion and found Nina in the stairwell holding a smoking wastebasket beneath a detector. You said you needed a distraction, she said. I meant a phone call. This was faster. We escaped with more than dignity. While Graham fought the sprinkler system, Nina slipped into the records room and photographed a shipping schedule. Every Thursday night, a company truck delivered aggregate samples from the quarry to an abandoned athletics storage facility. The next delivery was that evening. At dusk, Nina and I hid in the back of the truck beneath canvas tarps. It carried no stone, only sealed metal boxes. The truck passed the quarry gate without inspection and entered a tunnel cut into the eastern wall. My father had ordered that tunnel closed after a collapse years earlier. Adrian had reopened it. When the engine stopped, we waited until the driver left. Inside the nearest box were stacks of cash vacuum sealed beside betting ledgers. The second held medical supplies. The third held my father's missing safety report. Across the top, in red handwriting, he had written, Adrian overruled shutdown, support column unsafe. My father had not fallen from random scaffolding. He had been inspecting a structure Adrian knowingly kept open. A camera clicked behind us. Captain Shaw stood at the tunnel entrance with his service weapon raised. Ladies, he said, you have made an impressively bad decision. Captain Shaw ordered us to kneel. Nina obeyed first, slowly lowering herself beside the open cash box. I followed, keeping my hands visible. The jacket felt hot against my back. One drive lay beneath its lining. Caleb's letter was inside my boot. The evidence around us could convict half the town, but only if we left the tunnel alive. Shaw stepped closer. Phones. We left them outside, Nina said. He smiled. No, you didn't. She placed hers on the ground. I placed an old disconnected phone beside it. Before entering the truck, Nina had hidden her real one beneath the canvas with an active call to her uncle. We did not know whether he could hear us through the engine and stone, but uncertainty was all we had. Shaw kicked both phones away. You covered Caleb's death, I said. He killed himself with speed and stupidity. Toxicology will show he was sober. Reports are flexible. And the wound behind his ear? His smile vanished.
Nina looked at me. I had not told her that detail. Shaw shifted his weapon toward my chest. Your brother should have understood that talented boys are replaceable. He thought a scholarship made him important. He thought the truth did. The truth is whatever survives. A truck horn blasted outside the tunnel. Once. Twice.
Then continuously. Shaw turned his head. Nina moved. She threw a packet of powdered cement into his face. I grabbed the safety report and slammed the metal box lid down on his gun hand. The shot exploded into the ceiling. Dust and fragments rained over us. We ran deeper into the tunnel instead of toward the entrance. It looked like a mistake, which made it useful. Behind us, Shaw cursed and fired again. The old quarry plans lived in my memory. As a child, I followed my father through these passages while he taught me rock layers and load-bearing columns. Tunnel East connected to a ventilation shaft near the flooded pit, unless Adrian's illegal work had collapsed it. We reached a fork. I chose left. The passage narrowed, then ended at a steel grate chained from the other side. Nina stared at me. Please tell me this is part of the plan. It was built 20 years ago. So no. Shaw's flashlight swung around the bend. I pulled Caleb's locker key from the jacket pocket. It was too small for the padlock, but the brass tag attached to it had a pointed edge. I jammed it into the rusted chain link and twisted until the tag snapped. The broken tip fit the ancient padlock. It turned. We crawled through the grate seconds before Shaw reached us. Nina kicked it shut. He seized the bars and aimed between them, but the narrow angle forced his shot into stone. The ventilation shaft rose above black water. A maintenance ladder climbed toward a circle of night sky. Halfway up, my ankle failed. I slipped. Nina caught my wrist with both hands. For a terrible second, I hung over the flooded pit while Shaw hammered at the grate below. Let go of the report, Nina gasped. My father's pages were clenched in my free hand. In my old life, I had let go of every piece of my family to hold on to Adrian. This time, I shoved the report inside the jacket and climbed. We emerged behind the quarry's crushing plant. Nina's uncle waited at the gate with 3 police cars, but not Shaw's officers. He had called the State Investigative Bureau after hearing enough of the open line to understand. Shaw escaped through another tunnel before agents entered. The cash and ledgers remained, but the medical box was gone. So, was the original safety report. Adrian arrived with lawyers before sunrise and claimed the boxes had been planted by unknown trespassers. Graham supported him. The truck driver disappeared. By morning, Adrian had built his defense. By noon, the local news called me a bereaved heiress staging evidence against her fiancé. At 1, my mother asked whether I had truly lost my mind. At 2, the final toxicology report arrived. Caleb had been sober. At 3, the medical examiner who signed it died in a house fire. The fire changed the rules. Until then, Adrian had been trying to frighten me back into obedience. Now he was erasing anyone who could not be controlled. The medical examiner's death was declared accidental before the ashes cooled, but Nina found a witness who saw a heart construction van behind the house. The witness refused to speak publicly. I did not blame him. Adrian's defense grew stronger because fear made reasonable people silent. His lawyer appeared on television and described the quarry evidence as a family dispute distorted by grief. Captain Shaw reported his weapon stolen and claimed an imposter had confronted us. Uncle Graham produced records suggesting my father knew about the unsafe support column. Coach Mercer announced he had never participated in gambling and called Caleb a troubled young man I tried to save. Every lie had paperwork. Every truth had a dead person attached to it. For the first time since my rebirth, I wondered whether knowing the future was enough to change it. I had remembered clues, but Adrian adapted whenever I moved. The more evidence I found, the more people he endangered. Then my mother placed Caleb's jacket in a garbage bag. I found her at the back door before dawn, crying so quietly that I almost missed it. Adrian says this is making you sick, she whispered. He says Caleb hid drugs in it. He says the police will arrest you if they find them. He wants you to destroy evidence. He wants this family to survive. This family did not survive him the first time. She stared at me. What does that mean? I could not tell her I had watched her die 5 years from now, thin and ashamed, still defending the man who stole both her children. So I told her something harder. Dad knew Adrian was using company trucks. Caleb knew Adrian fixed games. Both died after confronting him. I found Dad's safety report in the quarry. My mother shook her head until the bag rustled. Adrian was with me the night your father died. Was he? Her denial stopped. I saw the memory rearrange itself behind her eyes. Adrian had arrived after the hospital called, but over years of repetition, she had placed him beside her earlier. That was how he worked. He did not invent whole stories. He moved one detail at a time until the lie became furniture. She opened the garbage bag and touched the hawk emblem. Caleb hated sewing, she said. I know.
No.
You don't understand. He made me repair this pocket after the championship game. He said the lining tore when Adrian grabbed him. My skin prickled. Which pocket? She turned the jacket inside out. Beneath the left shoulder, hidden under a patch, was another row of stitches. Neater than Caleb's. Done by my mother. We opened it together. Inside was a strip of medical tape wrapped around a small plastic tube. The tube contained several dark hairs and a flake of dried skin. My mother covered her mouth. Caleb had not hidden an object after his death. He had preserved evidence from a struggle before it. The state lab agreed to test it, but results would take days. Adrian's lawyer immediately argued the sample was contaminated and could belong to anyone who touched the jacket. So we gave him a reason to touch it again. Nina leaked that I planned to auction Caleb's memorabilia during the school's championship reunion, including the varsity jacket. The event would be televised. Coach Mercer would attend. Adrian, desperate to appear innocent, announced he would personally purchase the jacket and donate it to the school. He thought I was surrendering. On the night of the reunion, I walked onto the football field wearing Caleb's jacket. 60 yards away, Adrian stopped smiling. The auctioneer introduced me. I took the microphone. This jacket is not for sale, I said. But the man who killed my brother is welcome to come claim it. The stadium went silent. Adrian stood near the 50-yard line beside Coach Mercer and 3 members of the school board. Television cameras pivoted toward him. He could leave and look guilty, or approach and enter the trap. He approached. His smile returned by the time he reached the stage. Mara is unwell, he told the crowd. Please do not turn her grief into entertainment. He reached for the microphone. I moved it away. Tell them why Caleb pawned his ring. He had debts. Then why does the security tape show you pawning it? A screen behind us lit up with the restored footage from Bell Street Exchange. Adrian counting cash. Mercer receiving the envelope. Captain Shaw holding prescription bottles. The crowd erupted. Mercer backed away first. Adrian did not. Edited, he said. Nina Reyes has been targeting this school for years. Nina, standing beside the broadcast booth, switched the screen to the pawnshop ledger and time-stamped backup record. Then explain the betting slips found in your quarry tunnel, I said. Your quarry. Your family's boxes. My father's report was there too. Your father wrote many reports.
Yes.
Including one warning that you overruled a shutdown before his fatal inspection. Adrian's composure cracked at the edges. You have no original. He should not have known the original was missing. A murmur swept through the board members. I let him hear it. Who said it was missing? He realized the mistake instantly. His lawyer, stationed below the stage, shook his head. I stepped closer. You removed it after Captain Shaw cornered us. Where did you hide it? I was never in that tunnel. I didn't say you were. Another mistake. The crowd grew louder. Pattern by pattern, the defense he had rehearsed was falling apart because he could not distinguish what I knew from what I wanted him to reveal. Coach Mercer turned to leave. State agents blocked the tunnel entrance. Adrian saw them and changed strategies. He grabbed my wrist, pulling me against him as if embracing a hysterical fiancé. His mouth brushed my ear. You think cameras save you, he whispered. Your mother is alone at home. Cold shot through me. He smiled for the audience. I drove my knee into his stomach. Adrian released me with a grunt. The crowd gasped. He straightened and raised both hands, performing restraint. Then the stadium lights went out. Someone screamed. A gunshot cracked from the visitors' stands. Panic broke across the field. People surged toward exits. In the darkness, a hand seized the back of my jacket and dragged me down the stage steps. I clawed at the sleeve, twisted, and heard fabric tear. Emergency lights flashed red. Coach Mercer stood behind me holding a pistol. Adrian was gone. Mercer shoved me beneath the bleachers. Give me the jacket. You killed Caleb? He made everything difficult. The answer came too easily. Not confession, boasting. My body went still. Mercer mistook it for fear.
He recorded us, he said.
Thought he could trade evidence for everyone's safety. Adrian met him on Blackwater Road. I only moved the car. A small blue light blinked beneath my torn lapel. Nina had sewn a live microphone beside the hidden drive. Mercer followed my gaze. His face changed. I ran. He fired. The bullet ripped through the jacket's white leather sleeve, spinning me sideways but missing my arm. I crawled between support beams while his footsteps pounded behind me. Then another figure struck him from the side. My mother. She swung Caleb's old football helmet with both hands. Mercer collapsed against the railing. State agents rushed in and disarmed him. My mother dropped the helmet and pulled me close. Adrian took my car, she gasped. He's going to Blackwater Road. Of course he was. The place where Caleb died. The place where I would die 5 years later. Adrian was not escaping. He was returning to destroy whatever Caleb had hidden there. I took Nina's car because the police blocked mine behind the stadium gates. Rain began before I reached Blackwater Road. Not drizzle. Not mist. The same violent rain from the night Adrian killed me, hammering the windshield until the world narrowed to 2 pale headlight beams. My hands remembered the steering wheel jerking beneath them. My lungs remembered river water. For several miles, I was no longer chasing Adrian. I was driving toward my own death. Then Caleb's torn sleeve brushed my wrist. I kept going. Blackwater Road curved above an abandoned rail cutting. Caleb's wreck had been found below the eastern barrier, but the official photographs showed no skid marks. In my first life, I accepted that absence as proof he had been too intoxicated to brake. Now I saw fresh headlights beside the old memorial cross. Adrian's truck. He stood in the rain with a crowbar, tearing stones from the base of the memorial. My mother had placed that cross there after the funeral. Caleb had designed its hollow metal frame in shop class years earlier. The real proof was where Adrian first taught me to drive. Not the quarry. Blackwater Road. At 16, Adrian had brought me here in my father's truck and let me steer along the empty curve. I had remembered the vehicle, not the location. Adrian pulled a waterproof packet from inside the cross. I stepped from Nina's car. Looking for this?
He spun.
I held up the jacket. His face was rain white and empty. You should have pawned it. You should have left my family alone. He laughed once. Your family invited me in. Your father needed someone ruthless enough to save his failing company. Caleb needed someone to blame when he realized talent did not make him untouchable. You needed someone to tell you what every room meant. You murdered them. Your father fell because he climbed onto a condemned platform in a storm. Caleb died because he grabbed the wheel. So, you admit you were in the car. Lightning flashed. Adrian understood too late. Nina's dashboard camera faced us from the parked car. The live microphone in my lapel still transmitted to the broadcast crew, the state agents, and thousands of viewers whose phones had not stopped streaming after the stadium blackout.
He moved toward me.
I backed toward the barrier. You planned this, he said. I remembered it. What does that mean? It means I know what your truck looks like in my mirror. His gaze flicked toward the road. Sirens approached in the distance. Adrian charged. He caught the jacket collar and slammed me against the barrier. Metal shrieked beneath my weight. For an instant, past and present overlapped. Rain, headlights, his hand forcing me toward the drop. But 5 years of remembered death had taught me exactly where he placed his strength. I let go. My sudden surrender pulled him forward. I twisted beneath his arm, wrapped Caleb's heavy leather sleeve around Adrian's wrist, and used his momentum to drive him against the barrier. The crowbar fell. The waterproof packet slid across the asphalt. Adrian struck me once, hard enough to blur the road. He tore free,
and reached the packet first. Inside were photocopies and a small voice recorder. He crushed the recorder beneath his heel. Then a recording began playing from Nina's car. Caleb's voice. "If you are hearing this, Adrian found the copy I wanted him to find." Adrian froze. Caleb continued through the speakers, explaining that the original files had been mailed to a state athletic regulator under a delayed delivery arrangement. The packet at the memorial contained tracking numbers, names, dates, and a statement identifying Adrian and Mercer. Adrian stared at the crushed recorder. A decoy. Caleb had anticipated him years before I did. Sirens rounded the curve. Adrian climbed over the barrier, choosing the steep embankment over arrest. Mud collapsed beneath his shoes. He slipped, caught the rail with one hand, and dangled above the cutting. I reached him. Our eyes met. In my first life, he had watched my car sink without calling for help. I gripped his wrist anyway. "Why?" he gasped. "Because you don't get to become my excuse." Agents pulled him over the barrier and forced him onto the road. As they handcuffed him, the waterproof packet opened in the rain. Inside lay one final photograph, Caleb in his varsity jacket, pointing at the hidden pocket and grinning. On the back he had written, "Mara always finds what people miss." Adrian's trial began 7 months later. By then, the delayed package Caleb mailed had reached the state athletic regulator at last. It contained original betting ledgers, copies of my father's warnings, and audio of Adrian threatening players who refused to manipulate games. Coach Mercer accepted a plea agreement and testified. Captain Shaw was arrested in another county after trying to cross the border with cash and false identification. Uncle Graham claimed ignorance until Nina found emails showing he transferred company vehicles to Adrian and approved payments disguised as equipment rentals. He pleaded guilty to fraud. Adrian pleaded not guilty to everything. His defense was elegant at first. Caleb was unstable. Mercer was lying for leniency. Shaw was corrupt but unrelated. I was a grieving woman obsessed with turning accidents into murder. The jacket, his lawyer argued, had passed through too many hands to prove anything. Then the laboratory results arrived. The hairs and skin Caleb preserved beneath the repaired shoulder patch belonged to Adrian. More importantly, the dried blood beside them belonged to Caleb and contained traces of a sedative found in the medical supplies from the quarry tunnel. Adrian's lawyer called it contamination. The prosecutor displayed the pawnshop footage. The lawyer called it coincidence. Nina played the stadium recording of Mercer's confession. The lawyer called it coercion. Then the prosecutor showed the jury the torn white sleeve and the bullet recovered from beneath the bleachers. Mercer's weapon matched it. Fibers from the jacket were also found in Adrian's truck, caught beneath a seat bolt with Caleb's blood from the night of the crash. The jacket had remembered every hand that tried to erase it. Adrian finally took the stand because he believed charm could repair what evidence destroyed. The prosecutor asked one question. Why did you repeatedly instruct Mara Hart to pawn this jacket? Adrian said it was because the garment caused me emotional distress. The prosecutor produced his messages to Mercer, recovered from a cloud account. Get the jacket before she opens the lining. His defense fell apart so quietly that I almost missed the moment.
No dramatic confession. No shouting.
Just 12 jurors looking away from him at once. He was convicted of Caleb's murder, conspiracy, evidence tampering, fraud. The sentence ensured he would grow old behind concrete. Afterward, reporters waited outside the courthouse, asking whether I felt victorious. I did not. Victory would have been Caleb alive, complaining that I borrowed his jacket without permission. Victory would have been my father teaching me to operate the bulldozer again. Justice was smaller and colder. It was a locked door. It was my mother finally sleeping without tablets. It was the company returning to employees who had nearly lost their pensions. Nina's investigation won awards, though she kept Caleb's photograph above her desk and said his name before accepting any of them. I created a scholarship for athletes who reported coercion and corruption. Applicants were judged by people outside their schools. The jacket stayed with me. I repaired the bullet hole but left one broken stitch visible near the shoulder. Some damage deserves to be remembered accurately. On the 5th anniversary of Caleb's death, The day that had once been only months before my own, I returned to Blackwater Road with my mother. We replaced the damaged memorial cross and sealed nothing inside it. Before leaving, I put on the jacket. A folded note slipped from the cuff. I had checked every pocket, seam, patch, and lining. I knew the note had not been there before. The handwriting was Caleb's. "You took long enough." I laughed until I cried. Maybe the note had been trapped beneath the cuff for years. Maybe Rebirth leaves one mercy behind, so we know it was not a dream. I looked over the barrier at the river shining below. In my first life, that water was the end of my story. In this one, it only reflected the sky.